Hello, and welcome to Mastering the Art of Influence. My name is Stacy Hall, and I'm the California Regional Director with CFO. I have to give a shout out to all the West Coast members that have had an opportunity to attend and speak on some of the panels. Certainly one benefit to the virtual world that I'm thankful for. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment and talk about our steering committees. Each of our 26 chapters has its own steering committee made up of CFOs and one thought leader from each sponsor. These steering committees are so important. They're truly the backbone of CFO. They determine the programs we focus on and help find the speakers and the panelists. They are really the ones to make it all happen. During the pandemic, I've been so amazed by their leadership and commitment to bringing what is needed to our CFO community. We are so thankful for them. I also want to mention it's a great opportunity for you as a CFO to grow your connections, develop your own personal brand. If you are interested in being a part of your chapter steering committee, please reach out to your regional director to get more information and details. I promise you will not regret it. I know we're anxious to get started, so I want to introduce you to Bill Aulet, Managing Director for the Martin Trust Center for MIT Entrepreneurship and Professor of the Practice, MIT Sloan School. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to check out his bio, but a few quick highlights. He has degrees from both Harvard and MIT. He's an award-winning author with his international bestsellers on entrepreneurship. He's changing the way entrepreneurship is understood, taught, and practiced around the world. I've also been told he uses Peloton for one of his class case studies. He's going to moderate our program today with Jill Woodworth, the CFO of Peloton, and who also happens to be an MIT graduate. Should be a great discussion. So Bill, I will let you take it from here.
Thank you very much, Stacy. And if my voice isn't coming across completely clearly, please just let me know. Send me a chat. Greetings, everybody. It's great to see everybody out there, and I can't tell you how excited I am about today's session. As Stacy just mentioned this morning, I was teaching a group from Norway about innovation and entrepreneurship and how to get a business started, and I was using the Peloton case study. I thought that was appropriate, and going back to how it started, and so you can imagine, I'm thrilled to be able to welcome Jill Wordsworth here today, who's an MIT graduate, and to kind of talk about her personal journey, the Peloton journey, and what lessons she's learned that would be useful to you. Our session is called Influence, a lot having to do with influence, and our lives today, that revolves around it, but especially it's a big change when you're a CFO. So welcome, Jill. Do you mind just introducing yourself to the audience here today?
Sure. Jill Woodworth. I'm going on 3 years as the CFO at Peloton Interactive. It's obviously been quite the roller coaster since I arrived. And you know, we've had a couple private round financings, and then of course the IPO. And then before that, I kind of made a little bit of an unconventional switch. I spent 24 years as an investment banker at Morgan Stanley and then at JP Morgan. And so switched into the corporate world pretty late in my career. And obviously I got right into banking out of coming out of fresh course 14 economics major at MIT.
That's a pretty non-traditional. Most CFOs end up at the accounting firm, CPAs, and the like. They're not seen as economists, but you took an untraditional path, Jill. Can you explain why, how? Was it serendipity? Was it a plan?
So, well, I grew up in Southern California. I really wanted to go back east to school. I would say I was very much more of a math science person than an English history person. So for me, when I learned at an early age that MIT had an economics program, and a really good one at the time, there were a lot of famous economists who ended up becoming my professors, like Professor Solow and Samuelson. I felt was there during sort of the golden age of economics at MIT. And so for me, it was amazing to be able to combine my love of the math and the sciences with an economics degree, because at MIT, they obviously make you take all the hard stuff as well in order to graduate. So it was a lot of fun, and it was, incredibly rigorous. But I always, in the back of my mind, was very interested in the business world. And of course, today, young people coming out of college have so many opportunities in front of them. But back then, it was kind of like, if you wanted to go into business, you were saying, okay, do I do investment banking or do I do consulting? And I really self-selected into investment banking. I thought it was going to basically be like MIT, where you just drink through the fire hose of knowledge. I spent, obviously the first few years of my career often sleeping under my desk with a pillow and a heater, and just kind of worked myself to the bone. But that was what I was looking for, and I really wanted to immerse myself in that world. And I think whether it's risk aversion, which most people in finance have, or I'm not sure what else, I just stayed in it for a long period of time. And as my career grew, I got to work in the last decade of my career with a lot of consumer-oriented companies, and most recently, disruptive consumer companies. And so I tended to find myself feeling jealous of the people that I was working with at these companies, thinking it must feel so gratifying to build and operate the business. And as bankers, we just, we massage the story, we help with transactions, and then our relationship ends. And I kind of just started towards, I would say a couple of years before I got to Peloton, just sort of craving, maybe it would be a better move for me to move into a company to have that experience in my life. And so I got really, really lucky. I'm just going to say I got very lucky, because obviously Peloton was ticking every box in that regard.
Yeah, we're going to come to the Peloton story, which is truly amazing. But back to your story first, it's kind of like, it's very interesting. You came back to the East Coast to get good weather, I assume, and as well as go to school. But you work in investment bank. You're starting to see some consumer stuff. Can you name some of the consumer companies?
Oh gosh, I worked with some greats: Michael Kors, Planet Fitness, Shake Shack, Dunkin' Brands. These were all companies that I took public, and it was a really amazing run. I probably helped about 25 companies go through the public process in my time there. And, it was great. It was, for me, thankfully, it's like a native language now.
Yeah.
And so it was quite fun to do it from the other side, but a lot harder.
And frustrating when you're a bank. I mean, you're well paid, but it's frustrating for, kind of that MIT engineering mentality, like you want to build it, and you're on the other side. Why didn't you go for an MBA? That was one of the questions when I looked through it. It's like, oh, she's a CFO, banker, maybe an MBA, and then came out and did it. But you did. And I know your whole path is non-traditional, but
yeah. Well, I was one of those annoying undergraduate MIT students who used to try to take all the finance and management courses at Sloan. I don't know if you're still able to do that as an undergrad today, but I slipped myself into marketing classes and finance theory classes. And so when I was I did consider it. And I actually I was thinking about going back to Sloan, and I deferred my enrollment for a year. And then again, I just got sucked back into that vortex of banking. And I really did feel like that real life experience that I was getting. And make no mistakes about it, I definitely have whatever is called career wanderlust. I worked in Sydney, I worked in London. I probably had 12 different jobs in the span of 24 years. I worked in Japan for a period of time. So Clearly I was looking for something, but I was never bored. And I always felt that every experience that investment banking career afforded me
Yeah.
has kind of shaped who I am today, and frankly allowed me to come into Peloton with no preconceived notions on what to do, which
Yeah.
is good and bad.
Well, as a lot of people here know, it's not the traditional path. Now, Peloton, everybody wants to connect with a unicorn at a very early stage. You've done it. You've done it, and I'm sure you're going to say, "Oh, I was so lucky." But it's not all luck. The harder you work, the smarter you work, the luckier you get. How did you end up connecting with Peloton, and what lessons did you learn along the way as to how to pick a winner or someone who had good odds of winning?
So it's a very random way. Peloton was not my client, even though JP Morgan was the lead banker for Peloton. Peloton was actually covered out of our West Coast technology group. Obviously, Peloton sees itself first and foremost as a technology company. And while I worked with a lot of disruptive consumer brands, I think our banker on the West Coast wanted to keep this one to himself. So I actually was not involved at all in Peloton, had never met the company. And it was a very random experience on how I got introduced to John Foley, which was a mutual friend, someone that I worked with way back in the day at Morgan Stanley. Their kids went to school together at Avenues in New York City. And he was explaining this dilemma that he was looking for a new CFO. He had hopes on going public someday. And why my name popped into our mutual friend's head, who I hadn't seen in a decade, I don't know. But of course, John, being the stand-up guy that he is, he worried that, oh, well, how do I talk to her if she's at JP Morgan and they're my banker and I don't want to, quote, poach one of their people. So in banking, this is kind of unusual. Usually, when people leave a bank, it's very on the down low, right? And here he thought the best course of action was to call the head of investment banking at JP Morgan and ask for permission to talk to me. I know, it's a great story. So one Friday morning, never forget it. It was probably just about 3 years ago. It was late October, and my boss and the head of investment banking come into my office at 8:30 on a Friday morning, very somber. They shut the door, they sit down in my office, and they said, "Jill, we have to talk to you about something." And of course, here I'm thinking, I've survived 24 years in one of the most turbulent industries. I've never been laid off. And here it is, it's coming my way. And they said, and then of course he proceeded to tell me he got a call from John Foley. My relief, fell over my entire body. And I tried to downplay it. Oh, I guess that sounds interesting. If you want to send him my number, that's fine. Inside, I was obviously incredibly excited, but I didn't want them to know it. Bonus season's coming up and they know now I'm thinking about leaving. And so it really only took about a 30-minute meeting with John in a cafe in Chelsea. And it was like my ITO brain was going off. It was like, oh my God, it's a brand. It's a true lifestyle brand. They have a cult loyal following, very high retention, incredibly good product, health and wellness, literally every box you could tick for all of the things that I knew investors would just love about the company. Of course, I also knew and have lived through this over the last year, it also can be quite controversial. Certain aspects of the model, the price point and things like that. And all of that was running through my head, but his enthusiasm is just so infectious. And frankly, that's been one of the big misses during COVID for me, is that John and I would sit back to back every single day and have 30 conversations a day. And, and there's just such a buzz about working there that at my stage in my career, I never would have envisioned an ability to just learn so much every day.
Yeah. It's really amazing what he's achieved. And with what he's done, because he's so unconventional, his whole background. And for those of our users who don't know, I would really encourage you. There was a podcast on how I built this last year in April of 2019. And John talks about how he built Peloton from the very beginning before he'd even recruited Jill, and how metrics driven he was, how analytic he was. And he's really an example. I teach entrepreneurship, and we really teach the stuff that he does. He has an idea, but that idea is fundamentally not going to be correct. Even though at some point in the podcast, he says, my idea was correct. It can't be correct. You've got to try many different things. And he doesn't know who his customer is. And it turns out that his customer he finds in a mall in Short Hills, New Jersey, and he gets product market fit. But he knows that because he's watching metrics. And to me, you represent kind of this new CFO who doesn't come up through the kind of the accounting, comes up more kind of the metrics. We experiment, we test things. Does it work? Does it not work? We adjust. And that's a scientific method. That's not what they teach you in accounting. That's what they teach you in the scientific method. Stimulus, try something, see how it responds, measure it, and then adjust. And that's, to me, you represent the new CFO in that. And I think that it's not an accident that you and John come together very well. He is very metrics driven. He is not just, this is my gut feel. Can you give examples of that? I mean, I know.
Oh my goodness, you're so correct. I mean, everything we do, I mean, especially around advertising, and we are, I think for our price point, we probably are one of the only performance marketers, really, truly performance marketers, where it's A/B testing, it's testing web checkout flow, it's testing ads, it's testing everything to your point before we actually implement it. And testing showrooms, right? We now have 105 global showrooms because as we built them, we've needed to validate the fact that they're contributing, right? That these aren't just empty boxes that are not necessarily contributing to the overall sales process and bottom line. And so it's and even, I mean, the amount of research that we do on price elasticity, on new products, on competitors, as we geographically expand, everything we're doing is testing and learning as we go into these new markets. And what's been so great for us is that because we've operated that way over the last 6 years, going into the UK or going into the German market, we actually now have a playbook. We know the right formula, where to put stores, how to run ads, who to use in our ads, and obviously notwithstanding our lovely holiday ad from last year, which trust me was, I guess, a massive test and failure, but a lot of learning in that. But for the most part, it's been incredible because we really then have built a playbook for how to really take the business forward. And unlike a lot of other companies, the growth that we have is doing what we're doing today. It's not like you have to, as an investor in Peloton, believe in crazy things or other business, models that are going to have to take hold. It's selling more bikes and treads, building more products, expanding into more geographies. That's really and our playbook is that fundamentally, the same as kind of what we're doing today. We just need to grow off a base that we think is, just the tip of the iceberg in terms of our opportunity.
It's interesting because I look at Peloton and, I love the product. I have the product. I think it's great. I think it's really a good wave. But to me, Peloton is not really as much about the product as it is about the process, about this culture. It's about this capability. You have more in common with Netflix than you do with SoulCycle or, the people that make the hardware. Because Netflix, and I study this stuff, Netflix says nobody knows anything. You come with a hypothesis and we test it. And just to be clear, for those of you who are listening, that is not traditional management. Management is optimizing systems that already exist. It's creating more financial leverage. It's creating more predictability and de-risking. What we're talking about here is how do you systematically create new products, new opportunities? And when I was teaching your case this morning, this group in Norway, group of accomplished entrepreneurs, and someone said, I don't get it. Why didn't Peloton just ship the product over here into Norway really right away before somebody else made one here? And I had to explain them, it's not about the bike. It's not about the bike. It's about the experience. You have to understand that. And so for those who are out there, I think this is a really important point. The systems that you put in place to allow you to experiment will give you the influence that you need across the organization. You can no longer just come in and say, this is the profit and loss. You have to be someone who's metrics driven. And to me, that's why, Jill, I think your background is very relevant for the type of company that you are. And this is why why CFOs have to be more entrepreneurial. And that's why Peloton has been successful. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't mean to lecture. I should be asking you questions. But you have been able to work in an entrepreneurial mindset with a CEO who's very entrepreneurial and not have it be a tension and held back. You've been able to give each other energy. And that's what the future CFOs need to do of high growth companies.
I think what you said is so true and so important, because I think, I think you can often find yourself with people assuming because you're the CFO, you're going to say no, or no, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. No, that's above the budget. And no. It's been interesting over the last few years to really retrain the entire team that that's not who I am. And I had the biggest compliment given the other day because, we have curveballs thrown at us every single day. My team, it's like, oh, well, we have to analyze this. We're going to look at this and maybe we're going to go do this. And the biggest compliment I got was somebody, who we've hired into our sales business, met with my FP&A team and said, Jill, I just wanted to let you know, I was obviously impressed with their financial skills, but what I was more impressed with was them truly taking the time to understand what we needed to do from a business perspective and being really flexible in how they approached the modeling, that it wasn't traditionally, for example, how we look at, LTV to CAC, which is, the way we look at, obviously the payback on our subscription business. And like, we needed them to look at it this way because this is the way these particular players in the industry look at it. And it was the hugest compliment to me because that's what I've tried to emphasize. Those are the kind of people that I've really tried to hire, people that think like a business owner and can partner with people that aren't like our finance types, which are risk averse. And, and for me, the beauty of it too was very early on when I first got there, it was deciding what we were going to judge ourselves on. What are we truly going to be judged on? And in my view, it was how quickly we can grow our subscriber base and how good are the retention number is going to look of that subscriber base. And so you have to keep these true norths and then say, you know what, profitability is going to have to come second. These are the things that I believe investors in the long term are going to appreciate us for. And we have to come up with a tiered structure of KPIs to really care about, or else, you're going to spend too much time, on the minutia of, running the profitability models, when at the end of the day, there are almost 200 million people in the globe that have a gym membership, and we have 1.33 million members. That, if that doesn't scream opportunity, and we need to run as hard and fast at that in the, obviously in the right way, then, it's not about making $50 million or $80 million of EBITDA in a quarter. It just is completely irrelevant.
Yeah. And the interesting thing when you talk about those numbers, and we talk about, it's not just that there are that many memberships. The engagement levels of people who use Peloton as compared to people who go to gyms is much, much higher. So your customer is actually probably worth a lot more than a customer who signs up to go to gym memberships. So,
not only that, it's a much better value. It's a much better value proposition for the consumer. And that's really where we've been trying to work hard over the last couple of years, which is really underscoring that value proposition.
Yeah. So, by the way, for everyone out there, I would love to keep asking questions, but this is for you, and we would love to hear your questions as well. If you could put them in the Q&A, we would love to get the crowd involved. So you have to have these people who have accounting expertise, financial expertise. But as you said, there's a new crisis every day. There's something that you did not know that was going to happen yesterday. And yet you can't be overcome with anxiety. You have to have what we call an anti-fragile organization, an organization that sees change as a positive thing. Be it, we never wish for COVID-19, but it happened and we can't stop it. What are we going to do for our business? We're going to consist of, how do you build an organization, Jill? And how do you personally become anti-fragile yourself, in that you're prepared when you come in tomorrow that you won't be optimizing an existing system. You're going to have to take change and funnel it into something positive.
So it starts with hiring. So when I got to Peloton, across all finance functions, and we were, just to give you a benchmark, we were valued at about $1 billion when I got to Peloton. And there were 12 people across payroll, accounts payable, accounting, FP&A. That's not a lot.
For $1 billion company.
And my team is over 10x that today. Yeah. I've obviously added tons of different functions.
Right.
But here, this is going to be, maybe this is too simplified of an answer, but it's essentially what I've interviewed for my entire life. When I interviewed students out of MIT, especially for investment banking jobs at Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan, there's one characteristic that someone needs in order to succeed and be functional in an environment that's ever changing, and that's intellectual curiosity.
Yeah.
I want to hire someone that when I say, hey, for example, we've just decided to look at some M&A opportunity, or we've just decided we're going into Germany, or I want that person's eyes to widen and say, this is exciting. This is so cool. I don't know how to do this, but I'm so excited to figure out how to do it. And if someone has that inside of them, and that's something that I feel every single day, because it's Peloton is a humbling place. John, nor I, nor anyone is walking around Peloton knowing everything, right? I don't know supply chain as well as our head of supply chain. I don't know content as well as our head of content, or creative, or brand, or logistics, or member experience and support, or showroom development. But we all have to come together and be humble and constantly learn from each other to make the best product for our members. And to me, if someone is intellectually curious, they can be humble, but at the same time, completely driven and not thrown off course when they have something completely new to evaluate on a day-to-day basis. And trust me, it's been hard to find accountants that act like that, but I have them, and I am getting them indoctrinated into the program. But but it's been really fun. But that's really what you have to look for, is just someone you can throw anything at and they will adapt and they will adjust and they will love it. They will love every minute of that challenge.
Yeah, it's so amazing to hear you say that as a CFO. And first of all, everybody's got to understand, she came on, I just $30 billion market cap. You don't need to comment on that, Jill. $30 billion market cap, just to put that in perspective. This was a guy who was running around, couldn't raise money not too long ago in New York. Hires an, not a traditional CFO. It's just fantastic. And I would just add, you have to have that mindset. As one of my students once said, undergraduate applying to the class, I said, this class is very challenging. Are you sure you want to take this class with all you're doing? And she wrote me back a one-sentence answer. She said, I don't fear challenges, challenges fear me. I said, you're in the class. You have to have the mindset to just say, it's going to change, I embrace it. You have to have the skill set that comes from intellectual curiosity. You have to have the ability to sit down, and you have to have the community-based way of working, which is what this is about, influence. You can't do, not much gets done by any one person at all. Things get done by teams, and that's the point here. All right, I could go on, but let's go to the question. This first from Kelly. What is an area? Oh, this is vulnerability. This is a TED Talk. What is the area that you fell short of as a CFO or as an influencer, and you learned an important lesson from it?
I would say enterprise IT. That is not something that's under my purview at Peloton as a CFO. And for a company that is growing over 100% year over year, it's amazing how crippling it often can be if you don't have the right internal systems to really support, your financial process, your close process. And so, I probably, and this probably came from, a little bit of a lack of experience. I didn't get on that quickly enough. And, you never want to look in the rear view mirror and say, wow, I really should have identified these issues much sooner. And, we potentially would have been in a different place in terms of work-life balance for a lot of the people in my team. So I would say, when you, by the time you spot an issue, it's already a massive festering issue in a company that's growing 100% year over year. And so it's really, I think it's, trying to see around corners is hard, but that's definitely an area where I didn't come with a lot of experience, and I wished I had pounded the table a lot harder to get the resources and capabilities in our internal IT systems from the get-go, and not have waited, a year into my tenure to really start to pull that apart. I ended up hiring my own team, actually, to complement the work that the broader organization was doing. And, a lot of this, I'll say this is another, in an entrepreneurial environment, the other thing you have to be very balanced about is all of our technology and resources we're going to create the best product and member experience possible. Yep. And then what happens is you neglect your employees, yep, right? And the needs of the employees, the technology needs of the employees. Yep. And, what part of our mission is members first. And I come a little bit more from the Danny Meyer school of thinking about things, that I'm a little bit more, hey, we need to think about our oxygen mask on ourselves before we put it on our members. But that's really where a lot of our technology resources had been funneled for the first several years. And over the last couple of years, we've had to play massive catch up internally to really make sure that our internal teams have the tools they need. And it's really tough in IT to when you have to take a hard look in the mirror and look at that tech debt, and it's a big stack. but we're working through it. But that would be my kind of one regret, that I saw something and I didn't do enough early on.
Well, first of all, it's good you acknowledged it, and two, you mean you're not perfect at everything, Jill?
Hardly. And by the
Well,
way,
that was a joke. That was sarcasm.
but I was going to say, to me, that is, everybody has to influence in their own way. And, with my team, and this is how I've always been in my career, I've never understood people that felt like they had to be a certain way, right? That, oh, I'm the CFO, I'm running this team, or I'm the banker and I need to come in and impress this client. The most important thing for me has always been to be authentically me. And that means I am not afraid to say I made a mistake. I'm not afraid to, talk about myself in a personal way with my employees. I think establishing, we're not perfect. We're all just humans trying to get through this world. And I think now more than ever, the best way you can influence is to just be your authentic self and try to connect, with your employees as much as you can. And I've never spent more one-on-one time with my team as I have been spending now, given what we're in. And I've made a point to meet every new hire. That's been about 50 people in the last 8 months on Zoom. And it's so that to me is the way to influence. It's like, don't cloud who you are, just be your authentic self, be vulnerable. You make mistakes. It's, we always get taught not to say we're sorry, or, you can be sorry, or you can make a mistake, and you can be fallible. And I actually think it's easier for people to work for people that aren't perfect and don't consider themselves perfect.
No, I think that we had our MBAs at MIT, and they wrote the words that they most wanted to see in their careers and for the bosses, and it was authentic and purposeful, and those things are what the smartest people want, and that's who you want in your organization. And I think that's a terrific point. I mean, I think the other part here is that in this COVID-19 thing, a lot of things get magnified and become really clear. And while this was a healthcare crisis, which created an economic crisis, which created an egalitarian crisis, it has also created very clearly a mental health crisis. And to see how our employees, and if you're not paying attention to your employees, you said it's now more than ever. And you see that when you invest in that, in fact, you give better customer service internally and externally. So I don't believe that the two are decoupled, that you have to put, customers, external customers first. You have to put on that oxygen mask. I don't know who Danny Meyer is, but I wrote that down. I assume
he's the founder of Union Square Hospitality Group and Shake Shack.
Oh, okay.
And he wrote an incredible book, which I highly recommend, called Setting the Table.
Yeah, well, appropriate if you're at Shake Shack.
But he is, he in the hospitality industry, if you go to Union Square Cafe, everybody knows you get literally service that feels like you're a king or a queen. And they even have a no tipping policy. It's an all-inclusive thing. And, people for years have wondered, how did he inspire his employees, right, and his service staff to be that way? Yeah. And it's because he took care of his employees, who in turn then took care of their guests. And I believe that is so true.
Yeah, it's like building a product. Your people are part of the product. And if you're serving the customer, then you have to serve your employees, because they're integral to the product. Well, look, I know we're out of time. We could go on for hours here. This has been so terrific. I tons of questions that we didn't get to ask, and there are a lot of questions out there. I apologize to everyone. But Jill, this has just been wonderful. And hopefully there's some leadership skills that you all can pick up, because any investment you make in yourself pays back over and over again. It's the best investment you can make. And if you want to be a leader, you've got to be this new kind of entrepreneurial, this kind of person who deals with change. You can't just be optimizing existing systems. There will always be something where we need to do the accounting. You need to do the accounting. You need to get the numbers right, but you also need to grow the business. So with that, thank you, Jill. Any final words of wisdom for the crowd?
Well, I will say oftentimes when I get so angry when I hear that companies who want to go public are only looking for public company CFOs who have been there, done that. And I just want to say, hopefully I'm a plug for, you don't have to have the conventional background to do this. And I tried, I'm trying hard on that front, but it's an amazing opportunity. But I just wanted to say, to your point, non-conventionality can help you. It can really pay off in the end.
Well, the results speak for themselves. You don't need to say too much, Jill. When
Okay.
when
All right.
30 billion and keep going up, and the opportunity is there. And the
Great.
relationship you've had with John, it's a case study in how to do things right. So
Thank
with
you
that,
so much, Bill.
thank you. And thank you everybody out there, and have a great Thanksgiving, and stay safe and keep your loved ones close to you with a mask on.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.